Welcome to the Pythagorean Theorem calculator. We're going to build a calculator that looks like this. If you put in 12 and 5 and then press enter, if you put in 5 and 4, it will calculate the missing side, 3. Put in any two sides, it calculates the third side. If you put in 3 sides and press enter, it's going to give you a nice error message. You must enter 2 side lengths and leave 1 blank. Or if you put in 1 but leave 2 blank, it'll say the same thing. So it tells you when it's not working and it tells you when it is working. So if I made this 3, it should calculate 4 for that. If I put in 56 and 21 and change this to nothing and press enter, it will calculate the decimal value as well. This is what we need to build, and this is how we're going to do it. I'm in REPL, home. I'm pressing OK. I want to create something, so I'm clicking the Create button, and then I'm looking for HTML, CSS, JavaScript. You have to have all 3 of them, and click OK. Then give it a title. I'm going to call this Pythagoras Calculator. Click Create REPL. You could also click the invite thing to invite me to be able to view this. This is called boilerplate HTML. It's just HTML that's given to us where we could put in anything we want. Here it says the title is repl.it. I'm going to change the title to, we have some text that says hello world. I'm going to get rid of that. We have some script that points us at some JavaScript, which we have some JavaScript right there. I'm going to leave that alone for now. It's giving us, this script places a badge over your REPL. Like, fine, I'm going to leave that in there. I need to get an image of a triangle in here. Click on the 3 dots here and upload a file. I've drawn a picture of a triangle. I'm going to upload that. It's called triangle.png. You need to make a right angle triangle, then you can upload it like I just did. If I double click on it, we can see it. It needs to be a right angle triangle, have a little right angle symbol like that. Let's go back into the index.html. I'm just going to put that image in here. I'm going to put an image tag, which is img for image. And then I'm going to put src for source is equal to triangle.png. Then a slash, that's the close of a self-closing tag. Then if I press run, it's going to show up right here, but super huge. I need to give this an ID so we can refer to it. So ID equals try.img for try image. You can call it anything you want. I'm just calling it try.im because it's an image of a triangle. I'm going to copy that word try.img. And then I'm going to go to style CSS, and I'm going to put a hashtag in front of try.im. The hashtag means we're talking about this specific named thing. I want the width of this to be 100 pixels, which is going to be too small. So if I press run, the triangle is going to get a lot smaller. So that's a bit tiny. I'm going to change the 100 to 200, press run. You can choose any size you want. The next thing I want to do is be able to position this because it's kind of jammed up in the corner here. In my index.html, I'm going to make something called a div. Div. Give it an ID is try.div. This is a div where my triangle lives. I'm going to indent the image like that to say the div, our try.div, belongs to the body. It's indented off of the body. The image belongs to try.div, so it's indented off of try.div. I want to position the try.div, so I'm going to copy that, go into my style CSS, and put in hashtag try.div, then position is absolute. We can specify how far from the left do we want it. Left, let's give it 100 pixels from the left. And then if I press run, it will shift it over 100 pixels from the left. And if I want it 100 pixels from the top, put top 100 pixels and then run. Now it's at the right position. I want to be able to put in little text boxes for A, B, and C, for the A side, B side, and C side, back into my index.html. I never closed this div, did I? After my image, I'm going to make an input. Input type equals text. Close that. If we press run, we're going to get a little text box that's going to just appear right here. I'm just going to put a little A in front of that. There we are. I want to be able to move that around because it's not exactly where I want to make a little div. Just copy this div. I'm going to call this a div. I'm going to close the a div and indent that. Copy the a div back into my CSS, hashtag a div. And then if I press run, it will position the a div at 100 pixels. Now not 100 pixels from the corner of the screen, the way it did with this div, but 100 pixels from the corner of that div because my a div is inside my triangle div. The a div is a child of the triangle div. Let's move it to the right spot. I want to move it right here with the CSS. I want that to be at 200 from the left, 50 down from the top of the triangle div. Okay, that's about where I want it. The B, I would like to be down here. So, and the C I would like to be actually on an angle would be nice. Go back into the index HTML. I'm going to copy my A div, make a B div. I need to be able to refer to my input box, so I'm going to put an ID for it is equal to, I'll call it A box because it's a text box. If I copy all that, paste it for my B, then come down here and paste again for my C and change this to B, 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 and this to C, C, C. Now we have an A, B, and a C box. I'm going to go back into my CSS, change that to B and that to C. The B, I want it to be down here, so I'm going to say from the top it's coming down a lot further. Let's say 200. I don't want it to come quite so far. I want it to be like, let's say from here, so let's say just 20 pixels to the left. Note that would be what I want the B to be. Yeah, let's go back and do that. The C, I want it to be here and at an angle, so I have to use something called transform to transform the C. Left, 20 probably is fine. Top is maybe just 50. Let's run that, see what that looks like. My B, maybe the B is a little too far down. I'm going to lift it up a little bit. Let's do 150. The C is probably exactly where I want it. I want to rotate that. Transform, rotate, negative 36 degrees. Let's run that, see what that looks like. And I just rotated the C. So 36 maybe is not enough. Let's go with 37 on that one. Okay, well, 37, 30, let's try 38. Okay, 38's a bit much, maybe 37.5. I'm just going to pull it away from this line top. Instead of being 50, I'm going to put it to 45. That looks fine. The next thing I want to do is put a little button to calculate. In the index, I'm going to make a little button. I'm going to give it its own div. Just copy all of this stuff. Instead of calling it cdiv, I'm going to call it button div. I'm going to put the button code, which is button ID. I can call it a calc button. Then on click, I want it to do something. So I want it to go to a function that we're going to define in JavaScript. That function, I'm going to just call it calculate. Equals quotes, calculate. Because it's a function, you need open close brackets, then a semicolon. Inside the button, like what the button's gonna, I could have enter or the word calculate. It doesn't really matter. Then I'm going to put the close button tag. I'm going to copy the word button div, go into my CSS, hashtag button div. And then I'm going to copy what I have here for my B div and paste all that stuff in. If I press run, we should see a button show up. It's positioned on top of the B, which is expected because I copied the B stuff. So I want to lift it up to about where the height of the C and then move it over to the center of the triangle. The C height at the top is 45. I'll just go with 50. And left 20 is not enough, so I'm going to go with 50 as well. Then run that. It's too high, not far enough over. Top, let's go with 80. And I'm going to go with 80. 80 and 80. Let's see what that does. I like the height. I just want to move it over a little bit more. Let's go with 90. No, let's go with 110. There we are. When we click on it, we want something to happen. And that's when we go into JavaScript. I'm going to make a function called calculate, open bracket, close bracket. And then we need an open brace bracket and a close brace bracket. In the index, let's make something called feedback. Down here, we'll make it still part of the triangle div. Give it its own div. Copy the button div stuff. The ID is feedback div. It's not going to be a button. It's going to be just a bit of text, a paragraph. P with an ID of feedback. And then we put in the close tag. Right now it's an empty paragraph. We don't see anything. In the script, I'm going to make that feedback. I'm going to make a variable, and I'm going to call that variable feedback box is equal to, it's going to get the information not from the box, feedback P bar. Feedback P is equal to document dot. We're getting it from the document. Get element by ID. Get, capitalize the element, capitalize the B in by, and capitalize the I in ID. Feedback. I'm going to make another variable called feedback. I'm going to make that feedback saying you are in calculate. I'm going to make my feedback P dot inner HTML is equal to whatever's in the feedback. If we run this and I click on enter, it should write you are in calculate. There it is. We're going to put numbers in here, and it's going to have to decide what those numbers are. I'm going to copy this code for feedback P, and I'm going to make something called a box. It's the text box of the A, not what's written in here, just the whole text box. I'm looking for a box. Then I'm going to copy that for B box and for C box. B box, C box, C, B. Then I'm going to make variables for A, B, and C times 1 because it needs to be a number. B box and C box. B, B, and C. This is B box and that is C box. So I'm going to say that feedback plus equals. So we're adding to feedback A equals plus the A value. And then I'm just going to add to that the B plus, I'm just going to copy all of that code. B is B and C is C. That's being added to the feedback. I'm going to take this stuff, which is telling the paragraph to be whatever is in feedback, but it's happening up here. I need it to happen lower. Run. If I put in 5, 3, and 4 and press enter, it says you want to calculate A is 3, B is 4, C is 5. Great. Now what I want to do is actually do a calculation. I'm going to put an if. By the way, if, let's say we didn't have a value for C, let's press enter. Let's get rid of that. And then I press enter. Yeah, see, A is 3, B is 4, C is 0. When it's empty, because up here we're converting the empty box to a value and multiplying it by 1, it's empty, it automatically gets changed to a 0. It thinks that C is 0. If A is a positive number, so greater than 0, and, this is how we write and, B is greater than 0, so B is a positive number, and C is equal to, that's a logical equals. So you have to put C is equal to double equals 0. Then we want everything inside this brace bracket to happen. I'm going to indent it because it belongs to the if. I want the C value to be equal to the square root. And to get the square root in JavaScript, you have to write math.sqrt, open bracket, close bracket. The square root of A squared, that's 8 times A, plus B squared, B times B. And there's our calculation. I can put feedback in here to say calculating C. I'll just write that as some text. Calculating C. This is when I actually assign the feedback in here its value. That needs to come lower than this. Let's press run. A is 3 and B is 4, and then we press enter. It says you are in calculating C. A is 3, B is 4, C is 5, which is what C is. The only thing I'd want to do a little bit more is get the value into my C box. I'm going to do that right here. I'm going to do the same thing we did here with our feedback. My C box is inner HTML of whatever the value of C is, not inner HTML, it's value. Run. A is 3 and B is 4 and press enter, and then we can see the C is 5. Almost done. Now we have to do the same thing. What happens if you're given A and C but you don't have B? I'm going to use something called an else. Like if this is true, do the calculation. If it's not true, we're going to do this calculation. That's what the else does for us. Otherwise, if we didn't have an else, it would try and do this one, then it would try and do this one. But the else prevents this from happening if this did happen. For this one is what happens if we don't know what the B is. A is greater than 0 and C is greater than 0 and B is equal to 0. Our feedback should be that we're calculating B. B should be the square root of C squared. Take away A squared. So I'm just going to do C times C, take away A times A, and our B box should be the value of our B. If we run that, and if we put in value of C is 5, the value of A is 3, if we press enter, B should be 4. There we are. We were calculating B, and A is 3, B is 4, C is 5. Everything is working. What if we don't have the A? Like we have the C value, and we have the B value. If B is greater than 0, C is greater than 0, and A is equal to 0, our feedback should be that we're calculating A, and A is the square root of C squared minus B squared. Our A box should be our value A. And then if we press run, if we put in 5 and we put in 4 for B and press enter, A is 3. Good, that works. But what happens if we do something goofy like this? Like we have the 5, but not, nothing for the A or the B, and we press enter. You're in calculate. A is 0, B is 0, C is 5. In feedback, I want to say, like, you've made a mistake. I'm going to put an else after here and just say you've made a mistake. In my brace brackets, I'm going to put feedback plus equals error. You need exactly one blank text box. 2 text boxes must contain numbers greater than 0. And then if we press run, and if I do something silly like leave everything blank and press enter, We get you're in calculate. Error, you need exactly one blank box, one blank text box. 2 text boxes must contain numbers greater than 0. And then it says A is equal to 0, B is equal to 0, C is equal to 0. That works fine. So if I put in C is equal to, here, let's use some different numbers like 13 and A is 12, B should be 5. Yep, that totally works. But if I put in C is 13, A is 12, and B is 5, and I leave that and I press enter, it should give me the error because I didn't give it anything to calculate. You need to have exactly one blank text box. It gives me the error message. Let's clean that up a little bit. I also want an error message. What would happen if I put in something goofy like this? If I said C is 3 and A is 12, what's B? Okay, and see the problem? C is the longest side of the right angle triangle. If I made it smaller than that, I should get an error message, and I don't. I get not a number. You are calculating. A is 12, B is not a number, and C is 3. We're getting the square root of a negative, and that's why we're getting this nan error. We might want to handle that. We might want to put an else, say else if, copy that, if C is less than B, or C is less than A. Then there's a problem. Error, the hypotenuse must be the longest side of the triangle. I think I have to put this a little bit higher up because it's calculating B and giving it not a number, so it's never getting to this else. So let's put that higher up than everything else. It's going to be the first thing it's going to check, then it's going to put an else in. If we press run, then that should work. So if I put in 2 and 3 and then enter, error, the hypotenuse must be the longest side of the triangle. There we are. That totally works. If I put in 20 and 3 and then press enter, and it calculates the B as a nice decimal value. And there we are. That is how to make the Pythagorean calculator. The only thing I would do differently is then go back in the feedback. We no longer need you are in the calculator. I'm just going to say feedback is, put a comment in front of that. So feedback is, I'm just going to give it some empty text to start. It doesn't need to tell us that it's calculating C or calculating B or calculating A. Also, it's writing the A, B, and C up here. We don't need to write it down there, but we certainly need to know the errors. Press run. If I put in 13 and 5 and press enter, A should be 12. And there it is. So A is 12, B is 5, C is 13. And that's it. The only other thing I want to tell you about is this button right here. If I click on this, it brings me to a page that looks like this. This is the address of your calculator. You can copy that, put this in your blog. If you click on it from your, I'm going to click on link. Then if we go to the actual page, see what that looks like. Here is my link. It gives a little description of it. If I click on that, it will bring us to our Pythagorean theorem calculator. There it is. And that is it for the Pythagorean theorem calculator project. Have a good day.